Hey guys, check out this anime here. Our protagonist was sent to a magic school upon his brother's recommendation, but he was very mistaken when he thought it would be a simple magic school. There, he encounters many mysteries and a huge maze that takes over the school at night. That's exactly what we're going to see in today's video. The anime starts by explaining that in this school, 20% of all enrolled students drop out before graduation for various reasons. After this brief explanation, we see our protagonist and several other students walking towards the school. While he was walking, a flower comes to talk to him. Yes, a talking flower. She says, he seems very nervous. And he responds by asking her if it's that obvious. The flower confirms, and says he should try to relax, as today is his entrance ceremony, and even if a terrible future awaits him, he should be happy about it. What a mischievous little flower. After that, our protagonist becomes a bit thoughtful and says that this kind of thing can really scare newcomers. Then he meets a boy and a girl who are talking about that plant. The boy says that she shouldn't worry about her sharp tongue, as the plants there are especially malicious, since they are enveloped in a lot of magic, and that changes their temperament. The girl relaxes, and says that even though she doesn't know much about magical plants, she particularly loves magical creatures of all kinds. And then, we see a blonde girl arguing with a nerd. She says he should watch where he's going instead of reading that book, as he almost stepped on the stem of Madam, that plant from earlier. And at that moment, a girl wearing samurai attire passes by them, catching everyone's attention, not only because of her clothes, but also because of her incredible beauty. And now, for some reason that we don't know yet, we're shown a scene that appears to be from the future, where Oliver, our protagonist, is fighting with that samurai, and he starts thinking that meeting her might be his destiny. Sometime later, they arrive at the school and immediately witness a parade of magical creatures, where several beasts and animals march for everyone. At some point, a dragon appears, and a boy asks Oliver what race it is. Oliver explains that it's a Fafnir, and adds that there's no other dragon with scales so bright and beautiful. The boy is impressed and says he knows his stuff. After that, the boy who was talking to Oliver asks about the girl from earlier. He says she claimed to love magical creatures, so why is she looking so serious? She admits that she loves them, but tells them to look at the parade. They are making a troll walk alongside other beasts as if it were just any other monster, and she says that shouldn't be allowed. The boy, on the other hand, says that it's just a troll. They don't speak their language, and the wildest ones attack villages and people. Under those circumstances, it's obvious that some of them would be trained to serve them. She gets angry and says they only do that because humans invade their territories, and that in reality, they are gentle creatures. They start arguing about it, and at that moment, another student tells them to shut up, as they're bothering him. They apologize, and the boy says it's okay. At that moment, Oliver says they should introduce themselves before fighting like that. And as the girl is about to say her name, one of the students casts a spell on her, and she starts running against her will. She heads towards the monsters, and when she realizes, she finds herself right in front of a troll. The magic in her legs is removed, but now it's too late. The troll is right in front of her and staring directly at her. The girl is paralyzed, and the troll is about to attack her. But before he can do it, that samurai lets out a loud scream, and the troll stops his attack. She stands in front of the girl and asks if she can run. The girl says she can't, her legs are frozen. The samurai says that if that's the case, she should just stay where she is, and she'll handle the rest. The samurai draws her sword, and the other boys try to help by distracting the troll. The blonde girl uses magic, but it doesn't do anything to the troll. Then, they try all together, but Oliver tells them to stop, as it probably won't work like before. He says he has a plan and tells everyone to use wind spells and aim where he's directing, and they all do as he says. Then, Oliver uses a spell that adds to the others, resulting in a wind dragon that makes a very loud noise, attracting the troll's attention. At that moment, the samurai finds an opening and charges at the troll. As she jumps to attack, her hair turns white, and she finally lands a hit on the troll's head, knocking him out, and she saves the girl. After defeating him, her hands are trembling, and she starts complaining about how hard the troll's head was. There, she says it feels like she washed her hands with thunder. I wonder if she's ever done that to know the feeling, but oh well. Then the four of them arrive, and the samurai thanks them for their help. Thanks to the spell they cast, she finally hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Gotcha, right? You all should subscribe too. Actually, thanks to the spell, she found an opening to clobber the giant troll. Sometime later, they arrive at the school and are at the admission ceremony. Oliver goes to talk to the samurai and is surprised that she had no plan when she stood in front of that troll. She says she just didn't see any alternatives, she had to save the girl. At that moment, Oliver remembers that her hair's color changed at that time, and he calls that ability, innocent color. It's kind of a transformation that facilitates the flow of magical particles, thus giving more power to those who use that ability. And, having said that, she must have great potential to be a mage. Now, it's announced that the ceremony will begin. The principal appears after a flash of light right in the middle of the room, introducing herself as Esmeralda, the school's principal. She starts apologizing for the troll incident and informs everyone that it has been recaptured and is under control. After that, she says that Kimberly Magic Academy will be the learning home where they will spend the next 7 years. And she says that the only things that matter in that school are 2 words, freedom and results. In other words, she says they should live and die the way they want. And she adds that it's not a metaphor, as 20% of all enrolled students don't graduate because they've been eliminated before the end of the course. She says that if anyone has any questions about what she just said, they should speak up immediately, and she will answer. At that moment, the silly samurai raises her hand and says she has a question. The principal tells her to ask, and so she does. But we can see that she doesn't really have a question. She advises the principal to make circular movements like you're seeing now, in case you feel a headache, and it will go away. Oliver looks at her and asks if she's dumb. She says no, it's true, and it really works. Try it at home, and let me know in the comments if it worked, alright? Then, the principal announces that the welcome banquet will begin. She uses magic to make everyone float, and when they land back down, all the tables are set, and the seniors enter the hall to celebrate with them. After that, the food appears, lots of food. They sit down and start talking. They introduce themselves, and the blonde girl starts. She says her name is Michaela McFarlane. Then, the crazy creature lover introduces herself. Her name is Katie Alto, which is ironic since she's quite short. And she adds that she loves magical creatures and all kinds of animals. After her, the boy introduces himself. His name is Guy Greenwood, and his family is made up of farmers. Then, the nerd introduces himself. His name is Pete Reston, and he says his parents are non-magical. At that moment, Oliver praises him, saying that he's reading a good book. This makes him very excited since he didn't know anyone who liked the same thing. After that, Oliver introduces himself. His name is Oliver Horn, and his family has had mages since his grandfather's time, and currently, he's living with some relatives. He says he has primos that consider as brothers, and they already studied at Kimberly, and he wants to follow their steps. Michaela talks to him that the way he made that dragon voice was incredible, and Oliver says that altering spells and using them in other ways is what he does best. And finally the samurai introduces herself. She says she was born in a family of samurais in the east, and her name is Nanao Hibiya. She says her arrival to the school was weird. She tells that she was about to go to base in a war, when suddenly, a wizard named McFarlane saved her and invited her to the school. The blonde girl says that since this guy has the same surname as her, probably is from her father that Nanao is talking about. She just finds it strange that he went to Asia. After everyone introduced themselves, they start eating to celebrate the entrance of everyone in the Magic Academy. Some don't know how to cut or serve the plates, so Oliver ends up being the waiter for everyone there. Later, already at night, Oliver observes the clock and sees that it is a little crazy. He realizes that there are clock deceivers there, and for this, he must pay attention, not to lose the schedule of things. Here we see that he is sharing the room with Peter. Oliver decides to take a walk outside just before dawn. When he leaves, a voice talks to him, and asks why is he leaving so early. Oliver replies that he just wanted to take a look at the school while everything is still quiet, and asks who she is. The girl tells him not to worry. She is just a secret agent sent by Gwyn, Oliver's brother. She received orders to observe him until he gets used to the place. Oliver asks her name, and she says it's Teresa Karst. And after that she goes away. Oliver keeps walking until he arrives at a fountain, and guess what he finds there? Yes, exactly what everyone's thinking. A naked samurai bathing in the school's fountain. It was obvious, right? I bet everyone thought of that. At that moment, Oliver is paralyzed as he looks at her. But then he uses his wand to create a barrier so that nobody can see her naked. After that, he asks what on earth she's doing there since it's not a place for taking baths, and it's right in front of the male dormitory. She says it's no problem if people see, and we can see that she's fully covered, just as we suspected. But she explains that she's not just taking a bath, she's purifying herself from the blood spilled during the last war. Oliver observes that she has many scars, and she mentions that there were tough battles during the war. Nanao apologizes for him seeing this kind of thing, and as Oliver observes her, he is reminded of someone else we still don't know. Nanao finishes bathing, and Oliver offers his cloak for her to cover herself, and she thanks him. In his thoughts, he says he just met a pure and innocent girl with a faint scent of blood that nothing could remove. And today's video starts with one of the teachers welcoming them to the sword arts class. Before beginning the class, he provides an overview of what these sword arts are. The teacher asks if anyone can explain what it's about, and right away Pete, being the nerd he is, volunteers to explain. While he is introducing himself, some students start teasing him, saying that the nerd won't do anything in life except study. They also say that he wants to be the teacher's pet on the first day. Oliver notices the bullies making fun of his friend, but decides not to do anything for now. Then Pete starts his explanation. He says that sword arts are techniques performed with swords, as the name suggests. The use of swords by magicians began around 400 years ago when a magician was defeated by a non-magician in a one-on-one duel. Since then, magicians have carried swords to deal with close-range attacks or when they don't have time to cast a spell. They can also fight with the sword and use non-enchanted magic to distract or blind their enemy, making magicians' battles much more dynamic, and this style became the standard up to today. The teacher agrees that his explanation is correct and informs them that on the first day, he chooses 2 students who already know how to use swords to duel each other. Then he asks who volunteers for this. Without hesitation, Nanao steps forward. And then, one of the bullies who were teasing Pete also offers to participate in the duel, clearly intending to gain advantage over Nanao and gain fame for it. Oliver notices this and quickly raises his hand, saying he will fight Nanao, as they have a connection from fighting together against that troll we saw in the previous video. The guy gets angry and tells Oliver not to interfere, but Oliver stands firm and says he's the one who shouldn't interfere. The sly guy tries to mock Oliver and says he was stupid for fighting the troll, claiming that in this situation, it's best to wait for the instructors to handle it. Oliver agrees, saying that's a rational decision. He asks if that's what the guy would do when his friend is about to be destroyed. With this question, Oliver puts the smart aleck in his place, and he gets angry. Just as he was about to ramble on, Chella interrupts and says that if he's so eager to fight, he should fight her. Chella adds that everyone would be much more impressed if he defeated her instead of Nanao, and she immediately asks if he's afraid to fight her. To avoid looking weak, the guy accepts the challenge, and so it's settled. Oliver will fight Nanao, and Chella will fight the foolish guy. The teacher approves, and soon the first duel between Oliver and Nanao begins. Before they start, the teacher casts a spell to make the attacks non-lethal, so they won't get hurt. The one who lands a fatal blow to the chest or head will win. And he reminds everyone that student duels can only be fought in this way. Anyone caught dueling without the non-lethal spell will face severe punishment if they don't eliminate themselves in the process. The duel begins, and Oliver thinks about taking it easy since Nanao isn't good with magic and doesn't know sword arts. However, Oliver is in for a surprise. Nanao is really skilled with the sword. She gained a lot of experience fighting on real battlefields. Oliver is under a lot of pressure from Nanao. She's really impressive. He realizes he can't take it easy and starts using magic in the fight. It's clear that both of them are extremely strong, and at one point, when their swords cross, there's even a shockwave in the ring. They continue having an amazing battle. Oliver realizes this is no ordinary duel. He also notices that Nanao's sword has been bathed in the blood of many people, and there have been quite a few. In the middle of the fight, they back away, and Nanao begins to get emotional for some reason. For a brief moment, there's a tension between them. Nanao thanks him deeply for having such a magnificent battle. Then they focus on their final attacks. With his thoughts filled with sword craziness, Oliver says he's going to fight with everything he's got against her, until one of them bites the dust. These two have some crazy ideas, man. Unfortunately for them, or maybe fortunately, the teacher interrupts the fight before they can attack each other. The teacher, angry, asks if they don't remember him telling them not to eliminate each other. He says that even if unintentionally, they've broken the non-lethality spell. Oliver, confused, asks himself what on earth they were trying to do. After that, the teacher tells them to put away their swords and take a rest. Then, Chella tells the teacher that just that fight was enough, and she wants to give up her fight against Andrews, and he agrees with it. At this point, Oliver heads off seriously. While he's leaving, Nanao runs after him all excited and says that it was an amazing fight, and she's never had such an exciting duel before. In her exuberance, she says that it's really a shame they couldn't finish each other off. But Oliver just continues walking and doesn't pay much attention to her, until she calls him to fight again, with real blades and no non-lethal spells. He becomes really upset upon hearing this. He refuses and says he won't ever fight her again, since he doesn't want either of them to be killed, and he doesn't want to be eliminated either. And guess what she does when he says he doesn't want either of them to die? Yes, exactly, the girl starts crying. After I call her crazy, you all complain. Later they go to a fountain and talk about their last class, which was spell studies, where the teacher was an old lady who doesn't like wizards using swords in battles. After talking a bit, they move on to the next class, magical biology. Katie is really excited, as she loves magical creatures and animals in general. She says she's been looking forward to this class all day. The teacher starts talking in a frightening tone, saying that in her class, magical creatures are viewed merely as resources, and one or two usually end up as food and drink, and they will learn how to best exploit these creatures. She then summons the creatures that will be used in today's class, giant silkworms, those caterpillars you see there. Basically, in today's class, they have to channel magic into the creatures to make them produce silk. But it's not that simple. If they put too much or uncontrolled magic, the cocoon will turn black and a mini demon will come out. If that happens, they have to burn the creature on their own. The teacher also mentions that they can't receive help from any other student, and if they disregard this rule, they'll lose points. The students start, and some are more skilled than others. In her thoughts, the teacher notes that this year's class has improved significantly, as no one has been bitten so far. Oliver and Chella are doing well, and they help their friends with the spell. Chella says she'll take care of Nanao, as she notices that there's an odd atmosphere between them. Oliver agrees and helps Pete to succeed. Then he looks at Katie and sees she's putting in a lot of effort. At this point, the teacher says she doesn't need that much dedication, just to provide magic to the creatures. But Katie seems to have a different goal, as she's being very cautious. When Katie is on the 9th creature, Chella comes to talk to Oliver. He tells her that Katie is almost done. Chella asks why she wants all of them, since she only needs 5 to pass the test. Oliver says that it's much more than just passing for her. She's taking every possible care to keep all the creatures alive and ensure they don't suffer in the process. However, unfortunately, on the last one, she slips up, and the cocoon turns dark. Oliver tells her to burn it immediately, but Katie says that if she tears the cocoon, everything will be fine. Well, that's not quite what happened. After she opens the cocoon, the big creature comes out nervous and quickly bites her hand. Oliver and Chella quickly respond and cut the creature into pieces. The teacher soon arrives and says they'll lose points for helping her. Later, Katie apologizes to Oliver for making him accompany her to the infirmary. Oliver says it's all right, and then starts talking about his life to her. She says her family had many animals, and that's why she's loved animals and magical creatures since she was young. That's why when she sees an animal or creature suffering or injured, she can't stand it. And that's why she tried so hard to keep all the creatures alive in the previous class. Then Oliver comforts her, but says that the path she's chosen is really tough. But it's noble of her, almost like she's an angel. When he says this, her heart beats faster, and we see that our protagonist has a way with winning over the ladies. Then he tries to disguise it and opens the door. He shows her that she's not alone, there are many friends she can count on. Later, they go to the refectory to eat. While they're talking, they notice Nanao is feeling down, and we already know why, right? At one point, Pete remembers he left his book in the classroom and says he'll go get it. But before he leaves, Oliver and Chella get up and say they'll go with him, as the school can be dangerous at night. Pete's a bit bothered, but eventually accepts their help. Their friends comment that Kimberly School of Magic is located on top of a giant maze and might become dangerous at night when the maze spreads through the hallways. Now, we see the three of them heading toward the classroom, and they easily find the book. But as they try to open a door on their way back, they find themselves trapped, and the scene quickly changes. Now, They're inside the maze, and it looks really menacing. Pete is scared, but Oliver tells him not to worry, as it's normal for freshmen to get lost in the maze during the night, and a veteran or instructor should find them while patrolling. They move on and soon encounter a strange woman. Pete rushes towards her, but Oliver tells him to stop. The woman uses a strange mist that enchants the boys. Pete quickly becomes enthralled and tries to approach her, but Oliver soon wakes him up, and Pete regains his awareness. Oliver says there's no time to waste, and they continue moving forward. Unfortunately for them, soon their path is blocked by another student who says he's also interested in the new freshman. The guy seems like a vampire and says he wants to meet his new student soon. But unfortunately for them, they can't go back either, as the strange woman follows them, and those two veterans who want to beat up the young freshman. The bearded guy who looks like a vampire and the woman are approaching them. The guy casts a spell, and soon, some bones start appearing. And suddenly, a gigantic skeleton monster appears before everyone's eyes. The woman doesn't fall behind and immediately conjures a spell to give birth to a massive creature. I just wish I could understand how all of that fit inside her, but okay. The boys are quite impressed. Pete asks if she's summoning that creature. Chella says no and adds that she's giving birth to it. Finally, the two monsters are ready. Seeing that things have gotten crazy, Oliver calls them to run. However, the vampire guy summons some bones and keeps them trapped while fighting the weird woman. At this moment, Nanatsu arrives and says that this is definitely a place where people go for a brawl. She mentions that she recognizes it well since she has witnessed it many times. And while all this chaos is happening with the creatures, things are literally breaking. After her skeleton monster breaks, the vampire guy invokes another spell and completely reconstructs it. This time, he manages to immobilize the so-called son of that strange woman. At that moment, Nanatsu shatters the bone wall the guy created and moves forward. She says she'll protect them and tells them that their chance to escape is now, and they should go. Nanatsu says that as soon as she enters, the fight will become chaotic, and neither of the two can chase after them. And at that moment, the woman's monster manages to break the skeleton monster again. The vampire guy asks what kind of seed she'll plant in that disgusting womb of hers next. The woman retorts and asks him which body he took that spine from. Nanatsu continues speaking and mentions that someone who should have gone to the grave finally found a place for it. Here, she's talking about herself. The girl is thinking about kicking the bucket again. Didn't I say she was crazy? After this craziness, she tells them to leave and rushes towards the giant monsters. However, Oliver doesn't want her to go to her doom and runs after her to save her. But fortunately, before they could do anything, another veteran appears and sets fire to the monsters. With just one attack, he defeats both of them effortlessly. He says that's enough and reprimands the two shady veterans about the methods they're using to recruit new students. The vampire guy says he sees that his habit of setting things on fire before asking hasn't changed and calls him purgatory. The guy, in turn, tells him not to call him that in front of the new students. He then reassures our freshmen, saying they shouldn't worry because he won't let them lay a finger on them. And he swears by his name, Alvin Godfrey, the student representative of Kimberly. Then, another woman suddenly appears behind the weird creature and tells her it's better to listen to him. She introduces herself and says her name is Carlos Whitrow, a fifth-year delegate and a veteran. Man, the girl's name is literally Carlos. She says it's a pleasure to meet them. Alvin dismisses them and tells them to go back into the depths of the maze. After that, they are released and taken outside. Once outside, Oliver grabs Nanatsu by the collar and asks if she's crazy to want to go to her doom. He says he felt like she really wanted to kick the bucket and did it on purpose. Oliver is really upset because he doesn't want to lose his friend. His other friends tell him to calm down, and they go to a fountain to talk more calmly. Nanatsu says that Oliver was right, and she tells them that she lost attachment to her life a long time ago. She says it all feels unreal, like a dream, and she just wants to end it all at once. She tells a bit about her last battle. She and her comrades fought against an army of 50,000 men, and at some point, she managed to reach the enemy's rear. Before reaching the shogun, who is like a king, she battled a guy and easily defeated him. After that, she was surrounded, and the shogun said he would take revenge on her, and the revenge would be to send her to oblivion without even knowing her name so that no one would remember her. Before she was dragged away, Nanatsu made one request. She wanted to duel a guy named Yasutsuna, the son of the shogun. She had heard that he was the strongest in their clan. The old man gets angry and says that she just sent his son to oblivion without even knowing who he was. Nanao is shocked and says it can't be. The angry old man orders the guards to eliminate her. But before their spears could reach Nanao, they suddenly stop. And we see a guy flying upside down on a broom. He says he saw potential in Nanao and asks if she would like to go to a magic school. And that's how Nanao ended up here, and she thinks all of this has been a dream. That's why she wanted to kick the bucket to fulfill her dream. She adds that there's no pleasure in using her sword for vengeance. Where she comes from, pleasure comes from fighting for mutual love, in a fair duel between two opponents who respect each other. With no malice, she says she learned it should be like that, to find the person she loves and fight with them until one of them kicks the bucket. Oliver asks if she really thinks it's right to eliminate someone you respect and admire. Nanao says yes, but understands that it seems twisted to them. However, when she fought Oliver, she felt exactly that. She was eager to know the outcome of that fight and didn't care if she kicked him or if he eliminated her. Now it's official, she's really out there, isn't she? She says that's why she was so sad when he rejected that idea. It hurt a lot, and it left her with a deeply wounded heart. Since then, she started to desire losing her life. She says she fell in love with him and his sword. Okay, I admit, that does sound a bit weird. Chella says she truly thinks like a warrior but says she can't allow it because they're friends. She says she'll teach Nanao a different way to live. From now on, she should look at Oliver as a person, not just at his sword. Yeah, right there. Chella also says she'll teach her a new way to live, and she should be very happy with her new friends. Nanao accepts and apologizes. She says she won't try to throw her life away anymore and asks them to please teach her how to live in this place. Oliver says it's no problem, and they'll always be by her side. The next day, they go to class. While walking, Nanao gets very close to Oliver, almost bothering the boy. Could it be? Nanao says they told her to look at the person and not the sword, and now she's doing that. Guy and Pete say Nanao has a crush on him, and Oliver gets a little embarrassed. Then, they arrive in the classroom, and at one point, one of the students asks the teacher what a Magelamina is. Well, I'd like to know too, since it's the name of the anime. The teacher decides to explain. He says a Magelamina is a specific type of sword art. He explains that a Magelamina is a technique that, when used, will definitely send the opponent to oblivion with no chance for defense. He adds that there are 6 known Magelaminas, and for a long time, they tried to develop new ones, but without success until now. Well, since the anime is called The Kingdom of 7 Magelaminas, I imagine another one will be created. Tell me in the comments who you think will create the next one. My guess is Oliver, but I'd like to hear yours, okay? The teacher goes on to say that these techniques are secret. How they work and who can use them has never been disclosed. Some even doubt their existence. He finishes by saying that's all he can tell. Next, Andrews, that troublemaker from the first episode, appears and comes to pick a fight with Oliver. Oliver says he's not looking for a fight, but the guy keeps provoking him. At one point, Chella shows up and scolds the boy. He tells her to shut up and says he's talking to Oliver, not her. Oliver then asks what he wants, and he says it's obvious, he wants a duel. Oliver accepts, and they go. But before they leave, Nanao complains to Oliver, saying she doesn't like what he's saying. She says he shouldn't lose on purpose and should fight with all his might. Andrews gets mad when he hears that Oliver might take it easy on him and asks if Oliver considers him so inferior that he pities him and won't take it seriously. After the class, Chella and Oliver talk. Chella says she has known him for some time and knows him well. He always wants to be the top dog and fears losing his place. After that, Pete comes in a panic, saying Katie has disappeared. Afterward, we learn that she heard they were going to send a troll that attacked her to oblivion. She rushed to stop it from happening. The guy responsible for eliminating the troll tells her to get out of the way. She says she won't, and he asks for her name. She tells him, and he says it makes sense now, considering her parents are as dumb as she is. Katie says she'll pretend not to have heard the insults about her parents but wants him not to send the troll to oblivion. He tells her to leave, and she doesn't. He says he'll use force if necessary and uses the pain spell on her, causing her to fall to the ground in pain. He tries to do the same with Katie's friends, but another veteran along with one of the teachers shows up. He says it was decided that they would investigate the troll case further, so its execution was postponed, and he is free to go. And so he does, leaving with his tail between his legs. After that, they return to school, and even after being hit with that spell, Katie seems to be very happy. At that moment, a bat arrives with a letter from Andrews, and we see that he's challenging Oliver to an official duel. Katie trying to socialize and feed that troll that attacked her on the first day of school. However, for some time now, she hasn't made much progress with it. Next, we go to the classroom, and we see that some cursed students are teasing Katie for trying to communicate with the troll. They start insulting her in front of Oliver and her other friends. At one point, Guy can't hold back and decides to confront them, but Oliver stops him, saying it's not worth picking a fight and they'll only get into trouble for it. Guy stops, but the boys continue to insult even more, now more intensely. Then Katie appears, and one of the troublemakers who were teasing her approaches her and starts making fun of her. She feels overwhelmed and doesn't know how to react to the situation. However, this time, it's Oliver who can't hold back, and he quickly takes out his wand and uses an explosion spell on the troublemakers, who don't understand a thing. Oliver talks to Guy and asks if he's good at fighting, and soon Nanao joins them. They take on the troublemaking students who were mocking their friend. But, as you can imagine, this doesn't go unpunished, and soon they find themselves in a form of detention. Katie talks to them and apologizes, saying that all of this happened because she doesn't know how to defend herself. But Oliver, Guy, and Nanao say it's not her fault, they did it willingly and don't regret it at all. Then they change the subject and start thinking about the duel that Andrews proposed to Oliver and Nanao, which will take place tomorrow. Chella says that the duel probably won't be fair, and they should be prepared for anything that might come their way. The next day, it's time for the duel, and they are led by veterans to the agreed-upon location. Upon arrival, they notice that it's a kind of coliseum, and the battle will take place there. They see that there are many people in the stands, and it is soon instructed that only Oliver and Nanao stay in the arena, the rest of them must go to the stands and just watch the spectacle. Before it begins, they announce that there will be a friendly demonstration battle. It starts with a hunt for kobolds, which are a type of werewolf. The objective is to eliminate as many of them as possible within the stipulated time, and this will be the duel. Oliver and Nanao are not satisfied with this, and Nanao soon explodes. She says that there is no merit in fighting creatures that have no will to fight, and this is just something for savage and unintelligent people. Nanao then goes to Oliver and calls him to leave, claiming that it's not even worth drawing the sword for this type of battle. However, Andrews says that he put a lot of effort into organizing all of this and can't let her leave like that. She'll have to stay even if it's by force. Nanao, at this moment, says that fighting them is much more fun than what they proposed before and gets excited. Inside the dungeons, a boy releases the next kobold, but instead, a terrifying monster is there in place of the kobold. Take a look at it. I think the Sesame Street's Garibaldo took some steroids to become a monster like that. The monster attacks the boy and throws him into the arena badly injured. The creature then goes on a rampage, attacking everyone in its path. Nanao asks Oliver what it is, and he says it's a Garuda, an epic and very dangerous monster. Andrews, seeing the creature, says everything is wrong, and he never wanted a creature like that in the duel. They try to attack the creature, but it easily defeats anyone in its path until it comes after Andrews and tries to attack him. Fortunately for the spoiled magician, Nanao appears and blocks the monster's attack, and look at her expression, man, while everyone is terrified, she's thrilled to fight it. She continues to fight the monster, and at one point, it uses a special attack that would have hit Nanao, but Oliver enters the battle and uses a wind spell on Nanao to prevent the monster from hitting her. After that, the monster goes after Oliver, and he faces the giant chicken to fight it, but it dodges Oliver's attack and strikes him in the abdomen, nearly spilling his guts. Afterward, he seeks a safe place to heal himself, and in the meantime, Nanao continues to fight the big chicken. Inside one of the dungeons, Oliver finds Andrews completely terrified and asks him how they can fight without feeling afraid of that monster. Oliver says that he is scared too, but Nanao probably isn't at all. He also expresses his disappointment in Andrews, as both Oliver and Nanao expected to see him fighting with all his strength in a real and fair battle. After that, Oliver finishes healing himself and returns to help Nanao. They come up with a plan and go after the big chicken. Oliver is responsible for creating an opening so that Nanao can strike the creature. He does as planned and interrupts the monster's attack, but his plan goes wrong. The monster quickly recovers and goes towards our protagonist. In desperation, Oliver puts himself in front of it and instructs Nanao to attack right after the monster hits him. And so he gets ready to sacrifice himself, but just before he goes under, Andrews appears and uses a wind spell to send the monster far away. After that, Nanao finds the blade she needed and goes after the giant chicken. She jumps and slashes the blade on the chicken's neck, cutting its head off. And thus, they manage to defeat the epic monster. After defeating it, Oliver thanks Andrews and says they only won thanks to him. The boy begins to open up and admits that he was very afraid to fight, but he was even more afraid of bringing shame to his clan, and he asks them how they can fight that and feel no fear at all. Nanao explains that her samurai way doesn't allow her to run away from her enemy, no matter who it is. And so, they kind of resolve their issues. And do you remember the challenge I mentioned at the beginning of the video? Well, it's here now. The Garuda they defeated was sent by this woman who appears on the screen. Can you guess who this person is? Pause the video right now and comment who you think it is. In a moment, you'll find out who it is, and I bet only a few will guess correctly. While you're down there, give that like button a click and subscribe. The next day, Katie goes to feed the troll as usual, and the veteran who befriended Katie admits that she admires Katie's dedication but thinks it's impossible for him to eat or socialize with her. However, before she can finish speaking, Katie screams, and the veteran sees the troll enjoying the food she put out. Later, in the cafeteria, many boys and girls approach Nanao. It seems that after the battle with the Garuda, Nanao has become quite popular among the students. But Katie feels uncomfortable, as Oliver also fought and is not receiving any recognition for it. I don't know about you, but I think Katie likes Oliver. Chella says she understands Katie and suggests that Oliver deserves a reward. She decides to give him a kiss as a reward for his victory against the monster. Oliver is surprised, and Katie gets very jealous. Then, Nanao arrives and asks what's going on. Chella says she's giving a kiss to reward Oliver for yesterday's battle, and then Nanao goes to Oliver and kisses him on the cheek, making Katie even more jealous. Nanao says it's now his turn, and since she fought too, she also deserves a kiss. Oliver says there's no way around it and moves closer to kiss her, but just as he's about to do so, a girl appears and calls for Oliver. He looks at her and realizes she's his cousin. She also gives him a kiss and then says she just came to say hello. Meanwhile, Nanao is still there, waiting for her kiss. Afterward, they go to the potion class, and the teacher explains that potions can be very dangerous, so they should pay attention to all the details. Surprisingly, Oliver does very well, and after he finishes his own, he helps his classmates. At one point, he notices one of the students messing up, and he quickly goes to help him. Suddenly, many people start having problems with their potions, and Oliver quickly solves all of them. After helping Pete, the teacher congratulates Oliver and says he seems like a potion expert, asking for his name. At the end of that class, Andrews gives Oliver some advice, telling him not to give too much credit to that teacher, as he has a habit of exploiting talented students. Later, a girl calls Oliver's group over to talk and admits that she was the one who cast the spell on Katie on the first day of school, the spell that made her run towards the troll. When revealing this, she apologizes and says she was forced to do it, but she doesn't know who forced her. After that, Katie goes to feed the troll again, and surprisingly, IT starts talking to her. The troll advises her to stay away, saying that the person is dangerous. At this moment, in the background, you can see the veteran who approached Katie. And now I doubt you don't know who the mysterious person from the challenge is. After that, Oliver connects the dots while talking to Nanao and realizes that Katie is in danger. Upon arrival at the location, they only find her sword, and the ogre says that the girl took her. He also mentions that he thinks she took Katie to the underground labyrinth, and so Oliver and Nanao head there. In the labyrinth, Oliver thinks about calling for Godfrey, the student representative who saved them in one of the previous episodes. But before he can call him, some kind of dust surrounds them and teleports them to a room. There, they encounter Milligan, the strange girl who had approached them earlier. She says she experimented with that troll and finally got it to speak, but it never spoke to her. Recently, Katie was able to make it talk, so she wants to open the girl's brain to understand how she did it. Obviously, Oliver and Nanao don't agree with this, and Nanao advances on her. However, The girl reveals her other eye and uses a special ability that begins to petrify Nanao. But Oliver manages to cancel the spell, and Nanao returns to normal. And Oliver tells Nanao not to let Milligan's gaze petrify her, and they quickly go into the fight. They both advance rapidly, with Oliver starting by using a lightning spell. However, Milligan retaliates with the same spell, and Oliver realizes that hers is much more powerful. Next, Nanao charges at the veteran. However, Milligan manages to handle Nanao easily. At one point, she uses an earth spell to trip Nanao, and then she goes in to attack our samurai. But Oliver, being attentive, as soon as Nanao stumbles, casts a fire spell to prevent Milligan from hitting Nanao. Milligan compliments Oliver, saying he's quite talented and knows when to use his spells. However, Oliver doesn't want to talk, and he quickly raises a wall of earth in front of Milligan. Then he uses a wind spell to shatter the wall and send multiple projectiles at the veteran. She manages to defend herself and admits to being surprised. Next, Nanao charges at her again and continues the battle. Milligan says they're giving her a run for her money, so she feels obliged to step up her game. She uses a lightning spell, and they take cover. Then, Oliver destroys some vials on a table to distract Milligan. During this moment, Nanao takes advantage of the distraction to go all out against the veteran. Unfortunately for her, Milligan had already anticipated her move and creates a hole in the ground where Nanao falls. She then sets the hole on fire with Nanao inside. But don't worry, Nanao emerges unscathed and quickly advances against Milligan. The veteran then retreats and uses a wind spell against our samurai. However, something strange happens. Nanao manipulates the spell with the tip of her sword and redirects it in another direction. Both Oliver and Milligan are impressed. In his thoughts, Oliver realizes that Nanao did this subconsciously. She simply sensed the magic, and since she considers her sword an extension of her body, she effortlessly redirected the spell. Milligan, on the other hand, becomes very excited about Nanao and wants to see how far her abilities can go. The crazy veteran says she's never had this much fun and is getting really into the fight. Next, Nanao and Oliver advance towards Milligan. She defends herself, but Nanao quickly moves behind her. But it won't be that easy to defeat her, right? Remember in the previous episode when she used her basilisk eye to petrify Nanao? Well, the scheming woman has another trick up her sleeve. She also has a basilisk eye in her hand and uses it again to try to petrify our samurai. However, now you're about to see something incredible. Nanao notices this second eye and realizes that her speed won't be enough to defeat Milligan before being hit by the basilisk eye's curse. Nanao simply cuts through space and time, so even if the curse is as fast as light, Nanao can now cut it. And that's exactly what happens. With this incredible ability of Nanao's, she manages to cut off Milligan's hand, causing her to fall unconscious. After that, Nanao turns to Oliver, and as if nothing had happened, celebrates their victory. Oliver, deep in thought, realizes that Nanao did all of this subconsciously. He says that she saw space-time and the distance separating her from her target as an obstacle, and she simply cut through it. Thus, no matter how fast the basilisk eye's curse is, Nanao would always arrive before being hit. Oliver continues to think that this is an unstoppable technique, in other words, it's a Magalame. Here, we have the first Magalame revealed in the anime. It's about time, right? In the end, this is what the anime is named after. Oliver adds that this Magalame doesn't match any of the existing 6 Magalames. My bet was right. I guessed correctly in one of the previous videos that Oliver would be the one to manifest the 7th Magalame. After that, Oliver provides first aid to Milligan, as there's no need to bury her. Afterward, Nanao says she wants a kiss to celebrate their victory, but once again, before she can get the kiss, the veterans arrive and ask if they're okay. Godfrey sees Milligan unconscious and says they won't need his help. The veterans mention that they received an anonymous tip that they were being attacked by Milligan and came immediately. But they express surprise that 2 freshmen were able to defeat Milligan, as she is indeed very strong. Oliver says they'll be fine, but he's still concerned about Katie. They then head to the infirmary to be with her. When Katie wakes up, she sees all her friends, and Oliver begins to explain everything that happened. They mention that Milligan became interested in her as soon as she got the troll to talk, which is why she wanted to study Katie's brain. However, Katie simply asks how the troll is doing. Oliver responds that because it's a unique and intelligent specimen, it will be fine. Hearing this, Katie becomes excited and starts to smile. She then goes to Oliver and Nanao and kisses them to thank them for saving her. Man, they're developing a strange custom among them, everything involves kisses now. After that, she starts smiling about the whole situation and says she doesn't care about any of it. Katie says that the school is full of people like Milligan, and she has to get used to it, otherwise, she'll always be sad when things like this happen. Oliver, upon seeing the purity of the girl, becomes quite emotional and starts crying. Katie apologizes and asks if something she said made him cry. Oliver denies it and says he is very happy to have been able to protect her smile and happiness. The next day, as they were walking, they come across Darius, the potions professor from the previous video. He approaches Oliver and asks him to accompany him on a mission in the dungeons. While they walk through the labyrinth, he explains the situation. Darius says he's going to retrieve a student's research, a task that he usually leaves to others, but this one is special because the student who conducted the research was exceptional. However, when the student was close to completing the spell, he was dragged upward, and Oliver asks the professor if the student was consumed by magic. Darius confirms and says that it's the most honorable way to go to the afterlife, because when a wizard is consumed by magic, they always leave behind an important legacy, and that's how magic has evolved for centuries. At one point, Darius encounters very strong monsters that Oliver says are much stronger than the Garuda they had a hard time dealing with in the previous video. Despite these monsters being ridiculously strong, Darius defeats them with incredible ease. Next, they arrive in a kind of hall and see a strange portal. Darius mentions that the monsters that came from there devoured each other. Those he fought earlier were the survivors of that. He goes to the portal and manages to close it. And folks, this is where things get intense. Remember at the beginning of the video when I said that Oliver would finally reveal his hidden power? Well, get ready for what's about to happen, my friend, it's going down. But before that, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to show some support. I deserve it, right? Let's get back to the video. Oliver says he has a question for Darius, and the professor tells him to go ahead. Oliver asks him what he was doing in the year 1525, on the 8th night of the 4th month. At this moment, Oliver makes a sinister face and seems really angry with the professor. Darius says that's a very interesting question, but perhaps too interesting. He says that sometimes when we ask a question, we receive something much worse than the desired answer. He asks Oliver how much he knows. Oliver, now quite upset, tells him not to answer his question with another question and says that he's the one asking question. The professor then asks if Oliver had been targeting him from the beginning. He expresses surprise that a relative of that woman is still alive. Then, Oliver goes into action. He draws his sword and goes after the professor. Darius also gets angry and confronts Oliver. However, in the first attack, Oliver realizes that his sword skills are much inferior and he quickly suffers a blow to the neck. But don't worry, this is when our protagonist reveals his true powers. Oliver thinks to himself that the professor's skill is far superior to his. The boy begins to visualize all the possible options he has to win the fight. However, in all the possibilities he envisions, he ends up defeated. He even says that in 10,000 options, there was not a single one where he could win against the professor. However, he finally finds the single possibility of victory. Oliver follows the thread of time in the direction of that possibility, and remember how earlier he had his neck slashed. So, in this alternate reality he found, he managed to dodge the professor's attack and counterattack, defeating him with force. Oliver says that this is the fourth Magdalene, named Angustavia, the thread that crosses the abyss. Darius, lying on the ground, says that this isn't possible and that this Magdalene should have gone to the grave with that woman 7 years ago. Oliver, in turn, says that there were things they were able to take from his mother, but this certainly wasn't one of them. Now Darius realizes that Oliver is the son of the woman he tortured and sent to her grave in the past. Then, Oliver says that the Dolor spell can only reproduce pain that the caster has already felt. Oliver explains that he made sure to experience all 128 forms of pain that they inflicted on his mother that night. He tells Darius to find the right words, and until he does, Oliver will keep torturing him. Oliver continues to cast the Dolor spell on him until the man no longer wants to live. Finally, Darius asks him to end it once and for all, and Oliver says that those were the words he wanted to hear and finishes him off. Afterward, his cousins arrive and ask if he's done. Shannon tries to approach Oliver, but he tells her to stay away, as he doesn't want her to get involved in all the filth. Then, Oliver climbs onto a rock, and several students quickly appear and bow before him, and I confess that in this part, I didn't quite understand what was happening. Then, Oliver is kind of crowned, and he promises to send to the grave everyone who tortured his mother that night. Oliver makes a list of the next targets, starting with Vanessa Aldous, followed by Francis Gilchers, Enrico Forgeri, Demetrio Aristides, Baldia Muezzicameli, and finally, but not less important, Esmeralda, the headmistress of the academy, who was the one who cowardly stabbed his mother in the back. With all those magicians who are on Oliver's list gathering for a kind of meeting, they discuss Darius's disappearance and begin to speculate the reason for it. The principal says that it's been 4 months since he disappeared, and by this time, it can be deduced that he was killed. An old woman says that Darius wasn't foolish enough to be eliminated in the labyrinth, and this was probably the work of someone. The magical biology teacher says that anyone there could have done it, but she thinks that none of those present would have eliminated Darius. And she starts to suspect McFarlane, Chella's father. When he is mentioned, he reveals himself on the ceiling upside down and says that he's glad they think he has so much value. The principal talks to him and tells him not to interrupt. He apologizes and says he couldn't contain himself. Then the principal says that no one there is involved in Darius's disappearance, and she warns that if that's not true, whoever sent him away will be their enemy. Then, one of those present asks what she would do if she found out that the one who sent him away was actually a student. The principal simply says that it doesn't matter, that student would only regret such foolishness. After that, we see Pete sleeping and seeming to be in some discomfort. Shortly after, he has a kind of dream where suddenly his chest grows, and he feels very hot. He wakes up startled and checks his chest to see what happened. At that moment, he sees that he really has a big chest and screams. Oliver wakes up and asks what happened. Pete says it's nothing and tells Oliver not to come near him. Later, they gather in front of the place where the next class will be. Pete's friends ask him what happened because he seems a bit strained. He tells them to be quiet and leave him alone for the day. I don't know about you, but I think besides the chest, he also got a pretty bad case of PMS. He moves away, and Oliver says it's better to leave him alone for a while. After that, Chella sees her cousin passing by and tries to talk to her, but the girl doesn't care and keeps walking. Nanao goes to Chella and asks if she knows that girl. Chella explains that yes, that girl is her cousin, and the one accompanying her is her assistant, Faye. She also says that since classes started, her cousin has been keeping her distance from Chella. After that, finally, the teacher arrives. He introduces himself as Dustin Hedges, and he will be teaching broomstick flying to them. Katie is very excited since it takes 6 months of school for them to start their first flying lessons. However, Nanao doesn't seem too thrilled with the idea. She says that if it were flying on a living creature, that would be fine, but she doesn't have much confidence in riding a broomstick. Oliver says that if that's the case, she's mistaken because broomsticks are actually living beings, so she shouldn't worry. Then the teacher opens the shed, and inside, they see many broomsticks. The teacher explains that some are more friendly, and others not so much, and some can even be a bit dangerous. Nanao observes the broomsticks and says she now understands what Oliver had said about them being living beings. The teacher says that's exactly it, and he mentions that they feed on magical and elemental particles in the atmosphere, as well as the mana they receive from the magicians who ride them. He also says that each broomstick has its preference for specific types of people. Because of that, not just any broomstick will allow itself to be ridden by anyone. Here we see that Oliver already had his own broomstick, so he didn't have to look for one. Meanwhile, everyone is surprised by Nanao because several broomsticks are interested in her. Oliver says that's because her mana is very attractive. However, Nanao walks away and soon spots a broomstick standing in the corner of the room and goes to it. The teacher warns her to be careful since that broomstick is quite violent, and if she's not careful, she could get hurt. Oliver looks at the broomstick and becomes a bit intrigued, but you'll find out why in a moment. Nanao approaches the broomstick and tries to pick it up. However, the broomstick hesitates to accept Nanao. The girl then talks to it and says that her old horse was just like it, only letting its owner ride it, and after talking a bit with the broomstick, it finally accepts Nanao, and they start flying. The teacher, on the other hand, is very frustrated because he tried to tame it for many years and failed miserably. Chella tells Oliver that Nanao is flying gracefully and that would be difficult even for an experienced person. At that moment, Oliver, after observing the broomstick for a long time, has no more doubts. That broomstick is really the one his mother used to fly. He becomes very intrigued as to why this broomstick chose Nanao. After that, they go to the cafeteria and chat while they wait for the next class, the alchemy class. They begin to discuss that they've been having substitute teachers for a long time since Professor Darius disappeared, and they never had news of his whereabouts. Little do they know that Oliver was the one who sent him packing. Next, Chella's father appears, and she is startled. He hugs her and begins to pamper the girl in public, which embarrasses her greatly. Pete, upon seeing him, gets very excited since Chella's father is the one who wrote the books he or she loves so much. Chella argues with him and asks where he's been all this time. He replies that he's been to various places and apologizes for not giving attention to his beloved daughter. Chella, in turn, says that he should apologize to Nanao, not to her, since he simply abandoned the girl at school and went to buy cigarettes. Shortly after, he reveals that he is the next alchemy teacher, which leaves Chella in despair. Soon, they head to the classroom, and the teacher asks if anyone has read some of his books. Right off the bat, Stacy, the one who didn't want to talk to Chella, says yes, she has read up to the 13th book. Unlike Chella, she seems quite eager to talk to her uncle, suggesting that the problem is really with her. Then, Pete says he has read as well, and in his case, he read up to volume 25, which makes him very happy. McFarlane says that because of this, he will bring a gift for Pete from his next trip to Asia. Pete is happy, but soon feels unwell and gets a bit dizzy. Oliver observes closely and suspects it has to do with what happened during that night. Then, they are greeted by the crazy old man who was at the meeting at the beginning of the video. He explains that he will be the one teaching magical engineering. His name is Enrico Forghieri. He's sucking on that big lollipop, there he is, and he says he will teach the students the foundation of magical civilization. In other words, the theory and practice they need to create magical structures and items. In the first class, he gives them 4 trap boxes they must disassemble in just 60 minutes, or the traps will activate and they will be in serious trouble. They begin, students divide into groups, and they start working. However, they have a lot of difficulty and don't make any progress until the time is about to run out. They rush, but Pete feels unwell and falls to the ground. At that moment, one of the boxes opens beside him, and several snakes come out. Fortunately for Pete, and not so fortunately for Oliver, the boy steps in front of the snakes and takes all the bites for him. There he is. The professor, seeing that everyone failed, is very pleased. Guy, upon seeing those snakes, takes the initiative and gets wet. After that, the snakes attack him, and he uses an electricity spell to send the snakes away, and it works as expected. He says that's how they deal with snakes where he's from. The crazy old man says it was splendid and then tosses lollipops to everyone. He says there are antidotes in them, so they better suck on them. Man, this episode is full of there he is. Then, Pete apologizes to Oliver, and he says it's no problem. Oliver also says that after class, he wants to talk alone with him about the change he underwent. Oliver says he was sure when he touched his body earlier. He asks if he changed genders. Pete confirms and says he had a strange dream, and when he woke up in the morning, he had big breasts and no more manhood. Then, he shows Oliver what he looks like now. Oliver doesn't waste any time and asks another question. He asks Pete if his lower parts also changed. The boy or girl confirms. Oliver then says what he has is quite rare in the world of magic. He is actually a reversee, a person who can change genders. Then, Carlos, the girl, appears. Yes, her name is really Carlos, and says that besides what Oliver mentioned, there are other things he needs to know. She hands him an invitation and tells him to attend the meeting that night. Oliver goes along with him, and when they arrive, they see that it's a kind of party for students with special conditions, including some reversies like Pete. There, they enjoy good music and food, as well as socialize with each other, given that they all have difficulties in socializing at school due to their adversities. At one point, Oliver says he can request a room change if he doesn't feel comfortable. Pete, feeling embarrassed, says it's not necessary, he or she will stay with Oliver. Pete says he'll just put up a curtain around his bed so Oliver won't peek. The next day, they walk and talk while exploring the school, and they spot several people flying on broomsticks. It's explained that there are some sports that use broomsticks. Any resemblance to Harry Potter is purely coincidental. However, it's a bit different. They use a kind of stick to knock their opponents off. Nanao is impressed when she observes it, and Chella tells Oliver that Nanao would do very well in broomstick sports, and he agrees. At that moment, a strange guy appears. Oliver asks who he is, and the boy introduces himself. His name is Tullio Rossi, a first-year student just like them. The boy is extremely rude, and before leaving, he taunts Pete, saying that they will meet again soon. After that, they go to the sword arts class. They are simulating battles, and it's Pete's turn to face that weird guy from earlier. Pete goes all out, but he is easily defeated by the boy. This frustrates Pete a lot, and to make matters worse, before he leaves, the boy starts teasing him, leaving him very frustrated. Pete has no choice but to ask his friends to help him train so he can get stronger. They accept, and soon Pete's training will begin, divided into two fighting styles, one taught by Oliver and the other by Chella. They train, and then they have lunch in the cafeteria. There, the annoying guy appears again to provoke Pete. He then shouts to everyone there that he'd like to organize a competition among the first-year students. This competition would be to determine who is the strongest among them, and he asks those who want to participate to speak up. Chella's cousin immediately volunteers to participate, and after her, other people also step up. Obviously, Nanao, Oliver, and Chella will participate too. The rules are simple, they will have 2 coins. With each defeat, they will gain a coin from the one who was defeated until only one person has all the coins, and that person will be the champion. We soon have the first duel, and it's between Nanao and a girl named Mira. She confidently attacks Nanao, knowing that she's not good with spells. However, Nanao easily dodges her attacks and defeats the girl with a single blow, leaving her completely defeated. Next, Oliver continues to train Pete. Oliver says that Pete has improved a lot and is getting better very quickly. After Pete leaves, Oliver's subordinate appears and tells him that Shannon and her cousin Gwyn are inviting him for tea. Oliver enters the labyrinth and walks to the agreed meeting place. Finally, he reaches the spot where his cousin called him. As soon as he enters, Shannon comes and hugs him. Then Gwyn tells him to treat this place as his own, and he can use it as he pleases for training or research. Oliver thanks them and says that before he got there, he met Ophelia. When he says this, Shannon becomes curious and interested. It's revealed that Shannon used to be close to Ophelia, but for some reason, they drifted apart. After that, Gwyn tells Oliver the reason he called him there. He wants to know about Nanao and asks if Oliver is sure she used a 7th Magellamina. Oliver says he can't be absolutely certain, but his intuition tells him that she indeed is the 7th Magellamina. He adds that despite being imperfect, she uses a Magellamina, and that tells him that the ability she used is similar to his. Gwyn says that besides that, she has a lot of charisma and attracts people to her, which reminds him of a certain person. Oliver says that his mother's broom always chose Nanao as its owner, and he also mentions that there's something about Nanao that makes him stare at her sometimes without even realizing, as if he can't leave her alone. Gwyn advises him to have patience, as being drawn to something is of great importance for a mage, and that girl will probably be someone who will change him completely. He tells Oliver to keep in his heart the feelings he can't express. After that, Oliver leaves the labyrinth. However, during the journey, he realizes that he's being followed, and he promptly asks Rossi to reveal himself. The tricky boy appears and says that he is indeed good at detecting magic. Oliver asks him what he wants since he's been following. Rossi says he doesn't want anything, he just came to fight Oliver to win his coin. He also says that this fight will reveal which one of them is better. He states the rules, which include no magic except the antilethality spell. Oliver agrees and quickly draws his sword. They begin the fight, and the guy immediately starts attacking Oliver, showing that he has a dirty fighting style, using tricks and schemes to gain an advantage. He manages to press Oliver, and even lands some punches with a type of brass knuckles. At one point, they stop, and the guy asks if Oliver is surprised by his fighting style. Contrary to what he expected, Oliver simply thanks him and says he will now fight seriously. They engage in the fight, and Oliver quickly immobilizes him while giving him a lesson about basic fighting styles. Afterward, the boy manages to free himself, but Oliver strikes him forcefully and defeats him. He hands over his coin and leaves in frustration. Oliver gives him some advice, saying that he should learn one of the basic fighting styles since his way of fighting will soon reach a limit, and he won't be able to improve further. After leaving the labyrinth, Oliver encounters Karst, his subordinate. She approaches him and says that his performance in the fight was amazing, and he demonstrated his superiority. Oliver thanks her but says it wasn't a good victory. The girl, in turn, says it was incredible and that she loves that side of him. However, she mentions that his kindness dulls his shine a bit, suggesting that he should be a bit more wicked. The strange girl says that if he wants to ditch her to regain his shine, he can. Look how crazy she is. Oliver, on the other hand, comments on her blushing cheeks and asks if she's been drinking. The girl becomes embarrassed, and her previously cold and dark demeanor disappears. She feels very embarrassed about what she said and quickly runs away. At this moment, the boy who was defeated by Oliver appears, and it's shown that another first-year student has challenged him to a fight in the labyrinth. And that's how today's video ends. Did you enjoy it? Then, subscribe to my channel, my beloved otaku, to stay updated and not miss any of the upcoming episodes. And also, please leave a like, it really helps me out. Finally, for those who are truly subscribed and always watch until the end, I've included an incredible video on the end screen. Tells the story of Pastry, a baking prodigy who was sent to oblivion and reincarnated as a noble in a world of fantasy and magic. In this new world, he tries to create the land of sweets he always dreamed of. Click here on the screen and check it out, okay? Until next time, take care.